All right, hello, my name is Scott McDermott. I do some blogging. I threw my Twitter avatar up there in case that's easier to remember than ScottM32768. You think that's funny, do you? I find this, I kind of like this IoT and the maker stuff and those kinds of things, so I'm not involved in Wi-Fi, HaLow, or 802.11ah or any of that stuff, but I've been kind of following the standard to see what's going on, and I thought that it had some interesting aspects to it, so I just wanted to kind of hit a few high points of what they've done in there just to kind of keep you guys in the loop so you can see what's going on. So what is Wi-Fi HaLow? Oh, I have disconnected my little clicker, and now I can't wander and click. There we go. Not this. If you're a Cisco person, this is a HaLow module with a fancy clear cover. That's not Wi-Fi HaLow. Okay, so the goal of the HaLow, I think I have another slide on this, but HaLow is the, actually I gotta do this in the other way. The standard is obviously 802.11ah. HaLow is the WFA name for it, the Wi-Fi Alliance, and they're supposed to start certification in 2018. No idea what's going on with that. But the actual standard for 802.11ah was certified, ratified in December, along with 802.11.2016 and 802.11ai. AI was actually required to be AI went 802.11ah could only be ratified if 802.11ai was also ratified because it has this quick 100 millisecond or less association time, and that was required as part of the standard. The goal of the standard is to create sort of an IoT communication system using the sub 1 gigahertz frequency. So the actual standard itself is actually refers to the sub 1 gigahertz, and it's not actually 900 megahertz. I'll come to that. So because of the lower frequency range, you get a bit more distance. So it supposedly has about 2 times the range of 802.11ac indoors. It's going to cover larger areas. There's a special mode that only gets 150 kilobits of throughput, but it'll reach for a kilometer. And then the frequencies vary based on the regulatory domain. There's kind of all over 900 megahertz if you're in the US. There's the, choose your, so it's actually ranges from 755 to 928 depending on your country, where you are at. See, now I've got people harassing me on my watch, which I didn't put into mute. The channel widths are kind of interesting. Because we are using these sub 1 gigahertz frequencies, we get about a 20 dB improved link budget, and then the channels are really narrow. They range from 16 megahertz for the wide channels down to the 2 megahertz, and then the 1 megahertz is special, and you can see how they're chopped up on the screen. And if you start thinking about 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16, that starts to sound like kind of a familiar 802.11ac pattern, and that's because it's basically 802.11ac that's been knocked down by 10. So it's like a tenth of 802.11ac. So if you take your MCS rates in 802.11ac, divide it by 10, you actually get the same setup. So 300 kilobits through 7.8 megabits, per spatial stream. You can have up to 4 spatial streams. It even has download multi-user MIMO. I'm not sure that would actually be useful, but it's because this builds on 802.11ac downclocked, it kind of, I guess that just kind of came along for the ride. I'm not sure. Since the standard's not actually published unless you want to pay $800 for it, it's kind of hard to tell for sure what's going on. It's just this is all from going through a variety of people's writings about this, and also reading the reports from the task group that worked on the standard. It'll show up in May, I think. MCS 10 is MCS 0, except everything gets an extra duplication, so it's highly reliable. So that's how they get the 1 kilometer range, but it's all the way down to 150 kilobits a second, and it doesn't do the mu-MIMO in that range. Some of the more interesting things I thought was that because they are expecting this to be IoT with lots of devices, the association identifier that can actually have to 8191. So it's like over 8,000 devices can theoretically be there. The special 1 megahertz mode doesn't even have an association identifier. So I think that they pop up, they send their stuff, and then they just go away is the intent. And then I can sleep for a really long time. Supposed to have battery life on par with BLE. And then there's a sort of a pseudo mesh thing with these relay nodes that can actually relay information from one hop to another. So you can actually, get quite a bit of range and cover a pretty large area if you have these relay nodes out there. So where can I get it? This sounds neat. I like IoT. That's a good question. You can't. There's 3 random Asian manufacturers that have announced, actually, there's 2 manufacturers that have announced system on a chip. There's 3 manufacturers that have announced reference boards using those 2 system on the chips. They announced them a couple years ago. There's no sign of anything coming out, unfortunately. It's like, great, so what's the point of this talk? There's no way to get no way to get anywhere. Well, if you really want IoT and you don't mind really low bit rates, you can go with LoRa. Long range is basically what it stands for. This is kind of an interesting IoT technology. And as you see, there's an actual board. You can go to Adafruit and you can buy one for 35 bucks. It runs in 900 megahertz or 433 megahertz, which you can't run in the US unless you're a ham. But it's a good reason to get your ham license if you want to play with this stuff. And it has a really interesting SpecYan signature. I've seen a couple of different ones where it's just the lines going across. But the intent is so that if you've got multiple of these things on the same channel, they won't be on all on the same sync rate. So you end up with the ability for these IoT things to share the devices. Another really interesting thing about this is it can receive 19.5 decibels under the noise floor. So you got your noise floor, you got your signal down here, and it can still pull it out. Which I saw a demo from one of the conferences, and I really wanted to throw it in here, but I could not find it. But it was really impressive that they were able to pull the signal out of all of that noise. But it's really slow. There's 2 different chips available for the LoRa, one of which starts at 18. That's 18 bits per second. The other one starts at 300 bits per second. But they go up to 38.4. That's all based on your range and how good the signal is and whatnot. But if what you really need is for something to chirp you a temperature, or humidity sensor, or if you just need to be able to hit a button to open a gate, something like that, you don't need high bit rates for that. So depending on what your use case is, you may be able to go with a LoRa option because you can do that today. I have a funny slide on here in an attempt to amuse Lee because he said he needed amusement. So alpacas are fully invested into IoT and drones. Do alpacas because I raise alpacas. So thank you very much, and that's what I have.
Thank you, Scott.